a cold stone chamber beneath the Red Keep, something is dying. It is green, it is small and stunted, and its wings are twisted, withered things that have never once carried it into the sky. This is a dragon. 100 years before this moment, creatures of its kind could blot out the sun. They melted castles into slag. They burned armies where they stood, and remade the map of the world in fire. And now, the last of them cannot even fly. When this small green creature breathes its last, the dragons of House Targaryen will be gone from the world for the first time in centuries. So tell me, what brought the gods of old Valyria to die, stunted and broken, in the dark beneath a human castle? Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Mysteries of the Realm, Episode 22, The Last Dragon. Who really killed the Targaryen dragons? Let us be sure of what we are burying. For a century and a half, House Targaryen ruled the Seven Kingdoms on the strength of their dragons. When the war they called the Dance of the Dragons began, there were near 20 of them living in the world. The largest gathering of dragons since the doom of Valyria. When that war ended, barely 2 years later, almost all of them were dead. And the ones that survived did not recover. Under King Aegon III, the boy who had watched his own mother devoured by a dragon, and who would come to be called the Dragonbane, the great beasts grew fewer and smaller and sicklier with every passing year, until there was only the green one, the stunted thing in the cellar that could not fly. It died in the 153rd year after the conquest, and it left behind a final clutch of 5 eggs, eggs that never hatched and turned, they say, to cold, gray stone. That much the histories agree on. The dragons grew small, the dragons died, but a fact and a reason are not the same thing. The man who set down this history, Archmaester Gildane, knew that, and when it came to the why, he did something a careless historian never does. He refused to give a single answer. He laid out several, he weighed them, and then he left them open for us. So that is what we will do. The first theory is the cage. There was a place in King's Landing called the Dragonpit, a vast dome upon the hill of Rhiannon, raised so the dragons of the royal family could be kept close and kept controlled. Beneath that dome, the dragons lived in chains, in darkness, in stone. And there is an old belief among the maesters that a dragon kept caged can never grow, that a dragon, like some great fish, grows only to the size of the water it is given. Pen it in stone, and it stays small. Let it fly free, and it grows without limit, for as long as it lives. The evidence has a certain weight to it. The largest dragons the world ever knew were creatures of the open sky. Balerion, the Black Dread, who lived 200 years and grew so vast his shadow could swallow a town. Vhagar, the old terror of the dance, large enough that no rider dared face her. Meraxes, whose skull alone could fill a castle gate. Not one of them was raised in a cage. And the dragons of the Dragonpit, the ones hatched in chains and shadow, never came close. It is a tidy theory. The Targaryens, by trying to hold their dragons, made them small. They caged a thing that was never meant to be caged, and it withered in their hands. But there is an objection, and it is a hard one, because not every dragon lived in that pit. On the island of Dragonstone, dragons lived wild and free. The cannibal, oldest and blackest of them all, that no man ever dared to ride. The pale, shy creature they called the Grey Ghost. And Sheepstealer, the ugly brown beast, claimed but once, and only briefly, in the madness of the war. They were never penned, never raised in chains, and they did not save the dragons either. The gray ghost was hunted down and devoured by another dragon. The cannibal and sheep stealer simply vanished, flown off into legend, and never seen again. If the cage was the curse, the free dragons should have endured. They didn't. So the cage, whatever it did, cannot be the whole of it. The second theory is stranger and colder. It says the dragons did not die of anything you could touch. They faded because the magic faded. Think on what a dragon truly is. Not merely a great beast, a creature of fire made flesh. A thing of sorcery, born of a world where the impossible was once ordinary. The world of old Valyria, before the doom swallowed it whole. And after the doom, that magic began to ebb, slowly, quietly, like a tide going out. The glass candles of the Citadel, old Valyrian glass, said to show truth across the world, went dark and stayed dark for 100 years and more. The warlocks of the East grew weak, their spells gone hollow. One by one, the wonders of the world receded into legend, and in those same years, the dragons died. In this telling, no one killed the dragons. The water they swam in simply drained away, and when the magic went out of the world, the dragons went with it, and their eggs cooled into dead stone, because the fire that wakes a dragon had gone out of the world entirely. It is a beautiful theory. It may even be the truest one, but it has a crack in it, because the magic never fully left. Beyond the wall, the old powers held. Men who could live inside the minds of beasts, the green seers in their trees. In Braavos, the servants of the many-faced god practiced their craft without interruption. The wall itself still stood, bound by spells older than the kingdoms. Magic did not die when the dragons died. It only grew quiet. And there is one more thing, a thing we will return to before the end. Because if the eggs turned to stone, because the magic was gone, then no stone egg should ever hatch again. Remember that. We will return to it. The third theory is the darkest, because it has a culprit. Years later, in the halls of the Citadel itself, an archmaester named Marwyn, a man his own order called half-mad, a man who walked among warlocks and shadowbinders, said something out loud that most maesters would never dare. He looked at a young novice, and he asked him this: "Who do you think killed all the dragons the last time around? Gallant dragon slayers armed with swords?" And then he gave the motive. The world the Citadel is building has no place in it for sorcery or prophecy or glass candles, much less for dragons. It is an ugly thought, but follow it. A realm with dragons is a realm ruled by fire, by kings who answer to no one, because they ride creatures that can burn a rebellion to ash in an afternoon. But a realm without dragons is a realm that needs counsel. Records, medicine, ravens, learning, a realm that needs the men in gray chains. And who stood closest to the dying dragons? Who tended the king's household, the royal nursery, the sickly beasts in their final years? The maesters, always the maesters. Marwyn's accusation is simple. The gray sheep, as he called them, did not slay the dragons with swords. They did it quietly, patiently, the way they do everything. But I have to be honest with you, because this is where an investigation earns its name. Marwyn is the least trusted man in his own order. He offers no proof, no poison, no plot, no name, no date. Only a question and a motive. And the trouble is, the dragons were already dying before any quiet hand could have finished them. The great ones were slaughtered in open war by each other. The wild ones, far from any maester, died alone on their island. So is Marwyn a man who sees a truth no one else will say? Or a bitter old sorcerer, blaming the order that shunned him? The clues point in a troubling direction, but they do not, in the end, convict. Which brings us to the fourth theory, the simplest one of all, that the dragons were simply dying, as any living thing can die. Remember the war they called the Dance of the Dragons. It was the only war in all of history that killed dragons by the dozen. And here is the cruelty of it. It did not kill the weak ones, it killed the great ones. Vhagar, Caraxes, Sunfire, Meleys, Vermithor. The largest, oldest, strongest dragons in the world, the mothers and fathers of every dragon yet to come, destroyed in barely 2 years. Most of them killed by other dragons. And what was left when the fire died down? A handful. Small ones, young ones, too few, and too closely bound by blood. A scattered remnant trying to carry on a line that had just torn itself apart. That is how you get a green dragon, no larger than a dog, with wings too withered to fly. That is how you get a final clutch of 5 eggs that never so much as cracked. Not a cage, not a curse, not a conspiracy. Just a wound too deep to heal. A family of monsters that murdered itself and never recovered. It is the cruelest reading, and perhaps the plainest. It is simply what the histories describe. But even this has a thread that will not lie flat. Because of the eggs. The last dragon laid 5 eggs, and they say those eggs turned to stone. Cold, dead, lifeless rock. And in King's Landing, they brought 9 mages across the narrow sea to wake them. 9 sorcerers with all their arts. And the mages failed. Every one. So the eggs were dead. The line was finished. The story was over. And then, more than 100 years later, and half a world away, a girl was given 3 eggs as a wedding gift. Eggs just as ancient. Eggs just as petrified. Eggs that everyone agreed were nothing now but beautiful, useless stone. And she walked into a funeral pyre with them, and under a red comet, with a death to pay for it, all 3 of them hatched. So I will ask you what Gyldayn would not answer. Were the last dragon's 5 eggs ever truly dead? Or were they only sleeping, waiting for a fire that no one in King's Landing knew how to light? So, what do I believe? I do not think 1 hand killed the dragons. I think 4 did, and not one of them alone could have done it. I think the dance broke them, shattered their numbers, slaughtered the great ones, left a remnant too small and too weak to mend. That is the wound. I think the cage made it worse. I think the long ebb of magic made it worse still. And I think that when those broken, dwindling creatures were at their most helpless, there were men in the realm who were not sorry to see them go, and who may not have lifted a single gray finger to save them. A dying body, an empty world, and no will anywhere to keep the fire burning. But the eggs trouble me. They trouble me deeply. Because if those 5 eggs in King's Landing were the same as the 3 that hatched on the far side of the world, then the dragons may never have truly died at all. They may only have been waiting. And no one, not the maesters, not the mages, not the frightened king who feared his own birthright, no one knew the price that had to be paid to wake them. The last dragon was a small, green, broken thing, but the fire it carried was never as dead as they believed. So tell me this. Of all of them, the cage, the fading magic, the maester's quiet hand, or simply a dying line, what do you believe killed the last dragons? Write it in the comments. I read every theory. And if you want to be here when we unravel the next mystery, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter.